Hey, I wanted to chat about believing in yourself and seeing through the hard truths of what you're going through. I've seen a lot in not so much in the comments, but definitely in forum posts where people are going through and they're saying the same thing, and it's almost as if they're acknowledging what they're going through, but they continue to do the exact same thing over and over again, and they're unwilling to really recognize the truth and then to make decisions that would help them improve their lives and get out of some of these problems. And you know, one thing I want to say right off the bat is I'm not belittling anybody who's done this, because I too have made many mistakes in my life, and I've ignored many times ignored those warning signs and those red flags because it's not what I wanted to believe. It's not what I wanted to be real. It didn't fit the narrative of what was going on in my own head, or what my expectations were, or what the illusion was. So I chose not to do this now, or chose not to believe the warning signs. And what I'll say is, in my situation, there were a boatload of warning signs throughout the entire process. And there were, there were even times in the beginning stages of this when we were first dating. And if you've listened to my story, you know that the dating process didn't necessarily last very long. We dated, it's one of those whirlwind romances where we, or at least I, being the idiot that I was at the time, decided that we were soulmates. This was the one. We picked each other. It's going to work. But, through all the crap, this is, okay, follow me for a second, because this is, this is inside my psyche, my 19-year-old psyche, or maybe it was 18, can't remember. I think we were dating at 18, got married at 19. For me, she was older. So, this is genius, thought process, critical thinking skills. In my mind, it was, hey, my home life was bad. Her home life was bad. We complemented each other. Our little idiosyncrasies matched up. That enabled us to get and understand each other, which means we were perfect. God, what was I thinking? Perfect for each other. Now, my point on this is just to demonstrate that I've been through this as well, right? I mean, and I'm sure that a lot of people can relate to this. And when you get in those situations and those red flags pop up, and they did, right? I mean, right off the bat, before we actually got married, there were a couple of instances where I'm like, holy crap, is this a good idea? Major warning signs of abandonment issues and stuff like that should have been deal breakers. But I didn't have the experience. I didn't have the mentoring to really make a positive change for me to be able to recognize this. Now, I get that's partly the way I'm wired. I can look at my son and he does some of the same things. It's really frustrating because I'm doing everything in my power to try to communicate with him in a way to where he doesn't make those same mistakes. I've even actually started sending him other videos that people do, because obviously I'm not sharing in my channel, but just so that maybe he can get that message. But here's the thing. And I've seen this a lot. I've seen this a lot with friends of mine and just people making decisions that they know are bad decisions. I have a friend of mine who her sister is just with the wrong person, knows she's with the wrong person. Even back in the day when I first started learning about narcissistic personality disorder, I'm like, holy crap, this completely meshes up with this. I recommended some books and they're like, oh my God, yes, this person is exactly that. As far as I know, I haven't talked to him in a while, but as far as I know, they're still together. And I think the thing is, or the thing I want to hit is, it's really hard for people to ultimately make those decisions to do something different. And I think part of the reason is you get comfortable in the chaos, because at least in your mind, the chaos is something. And I say that because I can remember feeling similar, right? I would have problems even in my marriage where I wouldn't bring issues up, or if I would get angry about something, I wouldn't push the button. One, because, I fell into the whole diatribe of the woman's always right. The guy is responsible for always apologizing. And, I would apologize even if I didn't think it was my fault, which then would, blow up my face later. Your apology wasn't real, that type of thing. And here's the thing is that you get so caught up in your situation that you don't make any positive changes. You are in such fear of making any changes and things being different, and are you worried that things are going to be worse? It's like, oh my God, I can't stand up for this because what if, right? In my situation, like, what if she leaves me before I had kids? What if this is the best I would ever have? What if I would never find anybody? I was in that stage where it was like, oh my God, I need to have somebody. I can't be whole if there's not somebody in my life. Granted, I get that I have someone in my life now, but my mentality on it is different. My self-value and self-worth is not tied to another person. I'm okay being alone. I'm okay. I like my house when it's just me in it. I appreciate the calm. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm different. Maybe, maybe things are just, whatever. Maybe I look at things a little differently. I don't know. But I will tell you that in the midst of the marriage, the first, 18 years, I wasn't willing to walk away. It wasn't until I started working on myself, not to the extent that I did after the divorce, but I started to realize that I was worrying about things I didn't need to worry about, that I could just be happy with the way things were going, all those different type of things. And when that happened, well, one, as you guys, if you've watched my story before or any of my other videos, I'm sure you've seen some of the ones where I've mentioned what happened is as soon as she started losing the ability to control my emotions, that resulted in her basically going, what's the word? I'm trying to think about, for not nuclear, but completely doing everything to try to regain control. She increased chaos. She increased conflict, gaslighting, all those different things, trying to get, in retrospect, I know what was happening. She was trying to get me to respond, blow up. She could shame me for it. I would apologize. Everything would go back to normal, and she would regain the power dynamic. And that's what was, and rightfully so. Over the course of the marriage, that worked. That typically worked. Why wouldn't she have thought that after 20 some odd years, lather, rinse, and repeat, that I would do something different? Here's the thing, though, is you got to believe in yourself, and you got to believe in what fundamentally is real. There are so many people making bad decisions and staying in them because they're just afraid of confronting it. They're afraid of the consequences, and there's significant consequences, but there are consequences on both sides, right? I look at it, and yes, I've been through a nightmare, and yes, some of you guys have been through nightmares much worse than mine. And had I made a couple of wrong decisions along the way, I would have been right there. It was just from the grace of God that I was able to not make some of the same mistakes other people make. I was able to, for the most part, hold myself together, though I did make some mistakes that could have blown up in my situation. Personally, as I've said in the past, I think the biggest thing in my situation is that she needed me working. She needed me employed. My job, it's certain DV type domestic violence issues and certain allegations could have destroyed my career. And pretty much that's where I can make most of my money. You destroy the career, and I go from making decent money to being a grader at Walmart, which sometimes I think might be easier, but the pay is a lot less. My point on this is that I get that it takes time to make decisions, but at some point you have to take your life back. You have to do other things. If you're worried about not being able to take care of yourself or whatnot, then do something to make your own money. If go back to school, do something to make you not dependent on the other person. And it's or or conversely, if you want out and you're the one who makes money, then if you can get your partner to actually start working, if you have children, put them in daycare so you can, if it gets to the point that you have to divorce, that one person can't make the claim that they're their primary caregiver, that it makes it more even. So you kind of position yourself more for 50-50 right off the bat. And make plans to be able to, not be blindsided by it. And, and I don't know if really there is a way not to be blindsided, because a lot of time, or oftentimes, you think you understand. I mean, for me, I went to an attorney, I talked to them. I'm like, okay, how bad is this? How bad is it going to cost me? What exactly am I looking at? Part of the issue is I didn't understand how evil another human being that you once loved can be towards you. And I'm telling you right now, guys, to a man, to a woman, doesn't matter. If you're dealing with a toxic ex, they will do things and say things and try everything they possibly can to win. If you are nice, they will use it against you, and they will take stories out of context. They will make things up. They will do whatever they have to do to play the victim, to try to gain favor in the family court and to try to get whatever the hell they want. Bottom line is, and this has been my fear, was my fear, and one of the saving graces for me to basically be okay with a lot of this, and that is, oh my God, had I not figured this out, I would still be in that situation. I would still be living in that environment, living with that emotional turmoil, emotional abuse, if you want to call it that, and I wouldn't be in the situation I am today. Now, okay, in some ways, maybe my life was easier. Well, a lot of ways it was easier, right? I mean, there's crap that I can't do now, or, things I can't do, things I can't primarily do. That would be different if I was still married. But, bottom line is that when you realize you're in the clutches of a toxic person, even if you make it work for a little while, that doesn't mean they're not going to ultimately discard you and take everything they possibly can. Again, to a man or a woman. A toxic person is a toxic person. They will do the exact same thing. That's why on this channel we have women who've been through the exact same thing, and we have men that've been through the exact same thing. Toxic people are toxic people, and they have patterns that repeat. I say this because you can move along or mush along or just, tread water and keep things in the status quo, but your life is never has the opportunity to get better. It never has an opportunity to grow. I'm not saying throw away whatever you're dealing with your current, with the relationship you're in right now, if you're in one. But bottom line is, you need to understand that unless you make some active changes or active steps to try to make things better, it's not going to change. And even in a lot of ways, therapy can be problematic because a lot of therapists, a lot of marriage family therapists do not really understand emotional abuse or cluster B personality disorders. And as a result, they approach working on your marriage in a certain way that doesn't necessarily help. But bottom line is, this is what I want to say on this, is if you're in this situation, if you are dealing with this, if your gut is telling you something is wrong, okay? Listen to that. If you're hearing red flags or you're seeing red flags, you're like, well, this isn't right. And if you can look back more than likely on your relationship, there are probably red flags that you saw before that you've made excuses for. I mean, I remember saying things to family members whenever certain things would happen. Oh, she's being like that because she's insecure. She doesn't, it's a lashing out mechanism, or it's, whatever. I would make reasons up why it was okay. And if you're doing that, if you see that if that's happening, listen to it. Take some steps to try to make your life better. Guys, we get one life. We get this one opportunity to spend this time on this planet, do the best we can in the amount of time that we have. And you have to decide what exactly it is you want out of it. Now, when these relationships break apart, and especially when you have kids, is it easy? No, it absolutely isn't easy. It's not. But it's one of those things that, you may not get to make the decision. You may come home one day and your house is empty. You may, or conversely, you might think you can make the decision and you're playing games with somebody and they finally decide they've had enough. Like in my situation, that's kind of what happened with me is, we were going back and forth on this and I'm like, look, either you don't really care about me or you're playing games, or you're just being stubborn and you won't work on the marriage because of that. Either way, those are all deal breakers. I ultimately got to the time and the way I was able to do this, and it was a timing thing, 6 years ahead of time, or roll the clock back 6 more years. If this would have happened, then I would have been in a worse position to deal with it. And we almost had a problem back then. And it was just too much. My whole life was wrapped around the relationship. The relationship was falling apart. And, and it was typical. It was typical love bombing. I finally said something about it. The clock reset. The love bombing started up again. The illusion was reset. I believed that, it's better now. We finally talked. Nothing changed, right? It changed for a short period of time just to redo the love bombing, just to suck me back in, just to regain control. And, that's what happened. The last time, whenever we were going through things, I'm like, look, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not playing this. I can't live like this anymore. And again, what I mentioned earlier is I didn't want to spend the rest of my life in that type of situation. I did not want to be living that fantasy land without a partner, without somebody who was actively working together with me to create a life. It was more of somebody basically systematically trying to undermine and destroy everything. And you just have to decide if that's what you want to do. My gut feeling is that you see it, you know it. And this message is primarily to those people who are still in the midst of these things and you're trying to figure it out and you're seeing it but you're not making the decision on it. You're like, yeah, I know what I need to do, but I don't want to. And you make excuses for it. Everyone has to make their own decisions and you have to come up with your ideas and your own timeline. I get that. Nobody can force you to make a decision that you're not ready to make. But not making a decision is also making a decision, and it's taking time away for you to be able to recover. If you guys have heard the analogy or the thing of, pay me now or pay me later, it's along the same lines. If you're running a car and you're not changing the oil and you're not maintaining it and you're not taking care of it, it's going to fall apart on you. If your relationship isn't good and you can't fix it, then, in the car analogy, maybe it's time to get another car. Anyways, I just want to say this because I see this so much. I see this so much where people are, you can see them making the comments that they know that they're in a bad situation. They're articulating, they're pointing out toxic behavior, and they just can't get themselves to accept it. Hopefully you can, if you're going through this and you're still stuck in it, you can look at it and say, okay, I need to make some changes. I need to try something different so that I don't wake up 20 more years later, still in the same situation. All right. On that, just think about that. Love to hear your thoughts on this in the comments down below. If you like this channel and you think it's helpful for you, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell notification so that YouTube will tell you when I post videos, and I will chat with you on the next video.